Welcome to section 10.3. This is Box-and-Whisker Plots. So homework after you have watched this video is page 697, 12 through 18 evens, number 30, 34 through 38 evens. So it ends up being about 9 or 10 problems. So to start off with Box-and-Whisker Plots, this whole idea started off with mean, median, and mode, and range, and that's a lot of stuff that you already know how to do. So really quick, let's define a couple of these first terms. So we have median. Median essentially means middle number. It's the middle number of some data. So if we had the data maybe 4, 6, 7, 4, 5, 6, the middle number of that data is only calculated if we actually reorder the data from least to greatest. Least to great. Sorry, I'm being very sloppy and shorthanded. So we could reorder it as 4, 4, 5, 6, 6, 7. I can check my work. Here's 4, 4, 5, 6, 6, 7. Cool. After that, we can do the sort of elimination method where we are crossing off numbers from the outside and then going slowly in, or you can do the rainbow method. So 4 and 7, 4 and 6, 5 and 6. So the middle number is essentially between 5 and 6, which is 5.5. So essentially to calculate that, we are adding 5 plus 6, that equals 11, and then we're taking 11 and dividing it by 2, which is 5.5. So the middle number of this data is 5.5. As well, we have quartiles. That is our other term that we need to understand. Quartiles are essentially when you take data and you split it into fourths. Data and it's split into fourths. So essentially you're taking the data and you are finding medians, or the median in the middle, and then you are taking the lower data and finding the median of the lower data, and then you're also doing the same thing with the upper data. Upper data, median. So let's actually try this concept of finding the median and quartiles with some data in a short moment when we start doing box-and-whisker plots. So understand that median is the middle number, and quartiles are essentially taking the data and splitting it into fourths. And we are going to find 3 total medians, the middle one, then looking at the lower data and finding the median, and the upper data and finding the median. So let's find a couple of steps. We're going to define some steps of how to create a box-and-whisker plot before we actually try working with some data. So the first step of any box-and-whisker plot, and in all reality, most data that you need to work with, you need to do this. You need to reorder the data from least to greatest. Data from least to greatest. First step, reorder the data from least to greatest. Our second step after that is to find 5 important numbers. Those important numbers are the minimum and the maximum of the data, finding the median, and finding the Q1 and Q3, and these are upper and lower, actually I should say lower and upper, I'm going to rewrite that, lower and upper quartiles. So we're finding those places where we can divide this all into fourths. After that, we need to draw a number line. This is our step 3. Draw a number line and plot the important numbers So let's take this concept and actually put it to some use with our data that we have here. So I'm going to zoom this out so we can see everything. So we have the data 7, 8, 9, 14, 4, 7, 2, 8, and 15. So we have a little bit of data. First things first, we need to do step number 1. We need to reorder the data. Oops, I totally didn't have that right. Let's reorder the data. So we're going to do step number 1, and in order to reorder the data, let's start out with our lowest number, which is a 2, and I'm just going to cross these out as I go so I know I'm reordering it and I'm not going to count the numbers twice. We also have 4. After that I see a 7, that's our next lowest, then 8. I don't just see 1 8, I see 2 8s. Looks like we have a mode of 8 maybe. Oops, oh goodness, we actually have 2 modes. I missed a number, so I actually wrote down 2 8s before I was ready. I should have wrote a second 7 down. So we have 2 7s, 2 8s. Then after that it looks like we have a 9, a 14, and a 15. So I say we have 2 modes because we have 2 7s and 2 8s, and a mode is of most frequently occurring numbers. So now what we need to do is we need to do step number 2. We need to find the minimum. So I'm just going to write min equals. We need to find the maximum of the data, so I'm going to write max equals. We need to find the median with an N on the end, median. We need to find Q1, which is the lower quartile, and Q3, the upper quartile. So doing that, let's now do that sort of rainbow method or the cross out method and find that information. So we have a 2, 2, 4, 14, 7 goes with the 9, 7 goes with the 8, so our median is an 8. As well, we can look at our minimum, which is a 2, and if you notice, I'm circling all of these numbers that work. Okay, so I'm circling all of these numbers that work for our data. So minimum is 2, the maximum is 15, the median is 8. Now I need to find my lower quartile and my upper quartile. So lower quartile, I'm going to be looking at eliminating that 7, eliminating the 2, 7, and 4. So my lower quartile is right here in between the 7 and the 4, so I need to do a little math. 4 plus 7 is equal to 11, and 11 divided by 2 is 5.5. So my lower quartile is 5.5. And I don't think I can quite write that in unless I zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to zoom in and write 5.5. Kind of hard to read. Let's see if we can zoom out and I still see it. Alright, so now we also need to find our upper quartile, and I have a feeling we're going to do the same sort of thing. We have an 8, 15, a 9, and a 14, so in between the 9 and the 14 is our next quartile, is our Q3, our upper quartile. So 9 plus 14 is equal to 23. And 23 divided by 2 is equal to, let me think, 11 and a half. Would that make sense? Yeah, 11 times 2 is 22 and plus a 0.5. So that's, yeah, that's one more added onto it there. So I have 11 and a half. And I'm going to zoom in so I can actually write that in here. You can write 11.5. Now let's zoom back out so that way we can look at our last and final step, which is to draw our data on a number line. So number lines are most effective when you are being evenly spaced with your numbers, because then we can also see how this data is represented. And let's hope that I just wrote enough dashed marks. So we know our maximum or our minimum is 2, so I'm going to start with 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Looks like I'm good. 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And so now this is how we plot it. I always suggest plotting the median, the quartile 1 and quartile 2 first. So when we do that, our median is 8. So I'm going to go down to 8 right here, and I'm going to draw a vertical line. I'm also going to go to 5.5 right here, right in between these two numbers, and I'm also going to draw another vertical line. And 11.5, I'm going to do one last thing where it's going to be right here, so a vertical line in between those. So I have my 3 inside points. This is essentially 50% of the data right here, and I'm just going to make a box, hence box and whisker. The last 2 points are 2, so I'm going to do a 2 here, and we have 15. So 15 is about right here, and here are my whiskers. So the information that we just had, the 7, 8, 9, 14, 4, 7, 2, 8, and 15, we can reorder that data into least to greatest, and then after that we can plot our points on this graph. And so what this means right here on the left-hand side of all of this, this is 1/4 of the data. 1/4 of our points or 1/4 of our data right here falls in this area. Another 1/4 of our data falls right here in this area. And if you notice, it seems to expand, it expands more numbers. Well, more data, or the same amount of data fits in that more expanded box as the same amount of data fits in the less expanded box. As well, we have 1/4 of our data on this left-hand side, and we also have 1/4 of our data on this right-hand side. Kind of cool. So that is how you plot a box and whisker plot. You need to reorder the data. You need to find the 5 important numbers, the minimum, the maximum, the median, and the lower and the upper quartile numbers, so the lower and upper medians. And then you need to draw a number line and plot those numbers in this sort of boxy, whiskery way. I like to think of it as a little cat. I'm going to add some nostrils. Oh, it's a little cat. Anyways, that's a little beside the point. Anyways, I hope you have a great day, and I hope this helps with your homework.